The leather-bound diary fell from behind the dresser, with a soft thud that echoed through Graceland's master bedroom like a gunshot. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, stood frozen as pages scattered across the Persian rug pages filled, with his wife's most intimate thoughts written in her delicate handwriting. What he discovered in those secret entries would shatter everything he thought he knew about love, marriage, and the woman who had stood by his side through fame's relentless storm. Some truths are too powerful to remain hidden, and some loves too deep to be understood until they're almost lost forever. The afternoon sun streamed through the heavy curtains of Graceland's master bedroom, casting long shadows across the opulent furnishings that had become as iconic as Elvis himself. He had been looking for his favorite cufflinks, the ones with the TCB lightning bolt, when he decided to move the antique dresser that Priscilla had insisted on placing against the far wall. "Just a few inches," he muttered to himself, his voice carrying that familiar Memphis drawl even in solitude. The dresser was heavier than expected, and as he shifted it, something tumbled from the narrow space behind it. A diary, leather-bound, worn at the edges, with a small brass clasp that had come undone. Elvis recognized it immediately as Priscilla's. He seen her writing in it countless times, always turning away when he approached, always closing it with a soft smile and a gentle, "Just girl things, honey." He stood there for what felt like an eternity, staring down at the fallen book. The pages had fanned open, revealing glimpses of his wife's careful handwriting. His mama had raised him to respect privacy, to be a gentleman above all else. But something about the way the afternoon light caught the ink on those pages, something about the way his name seemed to jump out from the scattered words, made him kneel down and gather the diary in his trembling hands. The first entry he saw was dated just 3 months ago. "I watch him on stage and see the man I fell in love with, but when he comes home, I see the weight of the world on his shoulders. He carries so much pain, and I don't know how to reach him anymore. The pills, the sleepless nights, the way he looks at me sometimes like I'm a stranger. I'm losing him, and I don't know if he even realizes it." Elvis felt his breath catch in his throat. He had always assumed Priscilla was content, that their life together was everything she had dreamed of when she was that young girl in Germany who had captured his heart. He flipped back to earlier entries, his hands shaking as he discovered a world of thoughts and feelings he never knew existed. "Today marks 2 years since we married," read an entry from May. "Elvis gave me diamonds, but all I wanted was his time. He's become a stranger who sleeps in our bed. I love him with everything I have, but love isn't always enough to bridge the distance fame creates." The words hit him like physical blows. How had he been so blind? How had he missed the loneliness in her eyes, the way she sometimes reached for him in the dark, only to have him turn away, lost in his own troubles? As he continued reading, Elvis began to see his life through Priscilla's eyes, and the view was both heartbreaking and revelatory. Hours passed as Elvis sat on their bedroom floor, surrounded by the remnants of his carefully constructed world. Each page of Priscilla's diary revealed another layer of truth he had been too self-absorbed to notice. The king of rock and roll, who could command the attention of thousands with a single hip movement, had failed to truly see the one person who mattered most. "He came home from Vegas last night," read an entry from just weeks before. "Exhausted, hollow-eyed, and so thin. I could count his ribs when he undressed. I ran him a bath, made his favorite sandwich, but he just sat there staring at nothing. When I asked if he was okay, he said, 'Just tired, honey,' but his eyes told a different story. His eyes said he was drowning, and I don't know how to save him." Elvis's hands trembled as he absorbed these words. He remembered that night, remembered feeling lost and disconnected from everything that once brought him joy. But he had no idea Priscilla had noticed, had cared so deeply. He had wrapped himself in his pain like armor, assuming it protected both of them. Another entry, dated during his comeback special preparations. He's been practicing for weeks, and I can see glimpses of the old Elvis, the one who lit up every room he entered. But there's fear there too. Fear that he's lost something he can't get back. I want to tell him that he's still the same man who made me believe in forever when I was 17, but he won't listen. He won't let me in. The realization hit him like a physical blow. While he had been struggling with his demons in isolation, Priscilla had been fighting her own battle, watching the man she loved disappear piece by piece, feeling helpless to stop it. She had been his witness, his silent guardian, even as he pushed her away. A particularly painful entry caught his eye. I found the pills again today. More than yesterday, different colors, different promises of escape. I flushed them down the toilet and waited for him to notice, to ask, to rage. But he said nothing. It's like I'm becoming invisible in our own home. Sometimes I wonder if he'd even notice if I left. Elvis felt tears streaming down his face. When had he last cried? The image of Priscilla, alone in their bathroom, flushing away his means of self-destruction, while he remained oblivious to her sacrifice, shattered something inside him. She had been trying to save him, and he hadn't even seen it. But it wasn't all heartbreak. Scattered throughout the pain were moments of pure love, observations that revealed the depth of her devotion. He doesn't know I watch him when he plays. Piano late at night. His whole face changes when he thinks no one is looking. The boy from Tupelo comes back, and for those precious minutes, I fall in love with him all over again. These glimpses of hope made the pain even more acute. She still loved him desperately, completely, but she was losing him to a darkness he had created himself. As the sun began to set outside Graceland's windows, Elvis found himself deeper in Priscilla's secret world than he had ever been in their actual conversations. Each revelation was like a piece of a puzzle he never knew was incomplete, showing him a picture of their marriage that was both more beautiful and more tragic than he had ever imagined. An entry from their anniversary made him pause. 5 years of marriage today. Elvis surprised me with a trip to Hawaii, and for a moment, I thought we might find our way back to each other. But even on the beach, under that perfect sunset, I could feel him somewhere else. His body was there, his smile was there, but his heart was locked away in a place I can't reach. I used to be the key to that place. Now I'm just another person standing outside, hoping for a glimpse. He remembered that trip, remembered thinking he was being romantic, thoughtful. But now he could see through her eyes how hollow his gestures had become, how he had been going through the motions of love, while his heart remained guarded. The entries grew more desperate as they moved closer to the present. I tried to talk to him about us today, about how distant we've become. He just smiled that public smile, the one he uses for reporters and fans, and told me everything was fine. But everything isn't fine. We're like strangers sharing a stage, each playing our part perfectly, while the real story goes untold. Elvis realized with growing horror that he had been treating his marriage like another performance, another role to play. The king of rock and roll, always in character, even in his own bedroom. But perhaps the most devastating entry was also the most recent. I've started imagining a different life. A life where I'm more than just Elvis Presley's wife, where I exist as myself, not as an extension of his legend. The thought terrifies me, because I still love him so much it physically hurts. But I'm disappearing, piece by piece, and I don't know how to stop it without leaving everything I've ever known behind. The word leaving hit him like a physical blow. The idea that Priscilla might actually leave had never seriously occurred to him. She was as much a part of Graceland as the gates themselves, as essential to his world as music itself. But here, in her own words, was the truth he had been too blind to see. She was suffocating in the shadow of his fame, drowning in a love that had become one-sided, Yet woven throughout all the pain were threads of hope, moments when she still saw the man she had fallen in love with. Tonight, for just a moment, he looked at me the way he used to. Really looked at me like I was the only person in the world. It lasted maybe 10 seconds, but it reminded me why I fell so hard for that beautiful, complicated man all those years ago. Maybe it's not too late. Maybe we can find our way back to each other if we're both brave enough to try. Elvis closed the diary and sat in the growing darkness, overwhelmed by the weight of everything he had learned. His wife hadn't just been living alongside his struggles. She had been fighting her own battle for their marriage, for their love, for the man she still believed existed beneath the layers of fame and pills and fear. The king of rock and roll had finally been dethroned, not by changing musical tastes or younger competitors, but by the simple, devastating truth of a love he had taken for granted. Elvis sat in the darkness of their bedroom until the grandfather clock in the hallway chimed midnight. Priscilla was still at her mother's house, a visit he had barely acknowledged when she mentioned it days ago, too caught up in his own world to pay attention. Now he understood it might have been less of a visit and more of an escape. With trembling hands, he reached for the bedside lamp and began reading the diary from the beginning. If he was going to understand the depth of what he had almost lost, he needed to see the complete picture. The early entries, written shortly after their wedding, painted a portrait of a young woman, desperately in love, but already beginning to feel the isolation that would define their marriage. Elvis is everything I dreamed he would be and nothing. Like I expected, she had written in those first months. He's gentle and fierce, vulnerable and strong, but the world wants so much from him that there's barely anything left for us. I knew marrying him would mean sharing him with millions, but I never imagined how lonely it would feel. Even then, in the honeymoon phase of their marriage, she had been struggling with the reality of loving a legend, while he had been masking. In the glow of having finally made her his wife, she had been grappling with the loss of the private man she had fallen in love with. As he read on, Elvis began to catalog his failures. The times he had chosen the pills over her presence, the conversations he had cut short, the moments when she had reached for him and found only empty space. But he also began to see something else, a pattern of love so deep and persistent that it had survived years of neglect. Today I realized that loving Elvis isn't just about the good times. Read an entry from 2 years ago. It's about loving someone who is constantly battling demons I can't see or understand. It's about holding space for both the man and the myth, even when they seem to be at war with each other. Some days I feel like I'm married to a ghost. Other days he comes back to me so completely that I remember why I believed in forever. The phone rang, startling him from his revelations. Priscilla's voice came through the receiver, soft and tired. "Hi, honey. I know it's late, but I couldn't sleep. How was your day?" For the first time in years, Elvis heard the question behind. The question, the hope in her voice that maybe tonight would be different, that maybe he would really answer her instead of giving her the polite, distant response she had grown accustomed to. "Priscilla," he said, his voice breaking on her name. "I need to tell you something. I need to tell you everything." There was silence on the other end, then a sharp intake of breath. "Elvis? Are you okay? You sound. I found your diary," he said simply, and the silence that followed was so complete he could hear his own heartbeat. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "What did you read?" "All of it," he said. "Every word, every truth I was too blind to see." He paused, searching for words that felt adequate to the moment. "Baby, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for the man I became, for the husband I failed to be. I'm sorry for making you invisible in our own life." He could hear her crying now, soft sobs that cut through him like knives. I didn't want you to find it like that, she said. I didn't want you to think that you still love me despite everything, he interrupted. That you've been fighting for us even when I gave up? Priscilla, what I think is that I'm the luckiest man alive to have someone who sees me that clearly and loves me anyway. I do love you, she whispered. I never stopped loving you. But Elvis, I can't keep disappearing. I can't keep being Mrs. Elvis Presley if it means I stop being myself. Come home, he said, the words carrying the weight of everything he had learned. Please come home and let me show you that the man you fell in love with is still here. Let me prove that it's not too late for us. The diary that fell from behind a dresser became the bridge that led Elvis and Priscilla back to each other. In reading her most private thoughts, he discovered not just the depth of his failures, but the extraordinary resilience of a love that had survived years of neglect. Their story reminds us that people we love most are often the ones we see least clearly, hidden in plain sight by our own fears and distractions. What secrets might be hiding in your own relationships? When did you last truly listen not just to the words, but to the silence between them? Take action today. Reach out to someone you love. Ask them not just how their day was, but how their heart is. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply pay attention. Share this story. If it reminded you that love requires more than just feeling, it requires seeing, truly seeing the person standing right beside you.